Okay.
We are. Excellent. So we're now live streaming. Let's go ahead and get the meeting started as soon as we hit record. Excellent. Thank you all for being here tonight for tonight's City Council work session for the City of Philomath. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the strategic plan, and the goal was for each of us to come to tonight's session with our top 5 priorities for the strategic plan, and really wanted to talk about those, our biggest priorities moving forward, and that should help us kind of get traction on what we want to focus on, we want the city to be focusing on, not necessarily this year, but in the years to come as well. So last time we kind of were talking about details, and I didn't want to go into each individual task in the strategic plan. I really wanted to kind of focus in on these bigger picture items. But first, we should do a roll call. And so I'm going to go ahead and mute. Ruth Post is in the City Hall chamber tonight. And so there's going to be a little bit of acoustical acrobatics. So I'm going to be muting myself here.
Jessica Andrade.
Present.
Catherine Bisco.
Here.
Ruth Causey.
Here.
Matt Lehman.
Here.
David Lowe.
Here.
Chaz Jones.
I am here. Excellent. Thank you for that. And so I'm just going to offer my priorities as I have listed them out, and I'm not going to give much explanation for them, but just kind of list them out real quick. But generally they involved, number 1 was economic development and tourism, which includes doing some analysis and policy development surrounding the economic opportunities analysis that we had contracted for, and also organizing and hosting more community events and bringing people together. So that's all under the umbrella of economic development and tourism. Second priority is housing and affordable housing. In particular, looking at our housing needs analysis and developing city policy based upon the housing needs analysis. Third priority includes infrastructure and continuing to save for our future needs, but also for moving forward with our deferred maintenance. So not leaving things for future generations to figure out on both the deferred end and on planning for our future. So those are my priorities, but I'm looking forward to hearing yours as well. So maybe we can each take a moment and discuss and just offer what our priorities were. And hopefully Chris and Ruth can kind of summarize these for us in the near future. I know Ruth Causey, you submitted yours via email. Would you like to go ahead and state what yours were?
Yes, and I would certainly support all of the priorities that you expressed. I think those are excellent. One of my top priorities is for disaster preparedness and prevention. My primary concern is with wildfire, but obviously there are any number of disasters that could impact our community and other communities who might choose to take refuge here. So that's one of my priorities. The other priority, which I did not include in the email, is the preservation of our wetlands. I would like to see the wetland area that was previously used by the high school for instruction, to see that preserved and linked to other natural areas via trails. So those would probably be my top 2.
Great, thank you so much. Did anyone else have, not aware of any others that had listed out theirs or already submitted them. Did anyone have any prepared for tonight's meeting? Councilor Andrade?
I mean, I have amended ones from last year that I can add to that, of course.
Can you,
Should I start
can you
listing
offer
them?
your top 5? 3 to 5.
I also, yes, everyone's priorities sound great, support them. And the environmental aspect, I want to find a way to have code in our, I want language in our code that protects our wildlife. And I know that's wanted by the Park Advisory Board as well.
You're muted.
I'm trying to look at my document on my laptop and it's just spacing over. But I do remember improving transparency and communication with city staff and counselors with the public and vice versa, and then among staff and council members. And one of the main things I thought would be interesting and doable would be to have list serves of, for each committee. And if people want to know about, public works, finance, and admin, they get a little notification. Anyway, let's see. I think you'll have to come back to me, sorry.
Did anyone else have any prepared priorities?
Mayor Jones, I did get submitted comments from Councillor Lowe and Councillor Nielsen. They came in last week.
Yeah, no problem.
I didn't have a chance to forward those on, so I can bring those up if they don't have them available, or again, if they'd like to share those.
It looks like they do. Ms. Councilor Nielsen?
I definitely I'm wanting to encourage the housing options for median and low income housing, to look at our codes of high density options and see what we can do to make more affordable housing available in the city of Philomath. And also the emergency preparedness is really high on my list of priorities. I think it's time for, coming out of a wildfire season and coming back from COVID, it is time for us to be a little bit more prepared as a city. So that was my number 2. And then I do really believe that we need to address the city's sewer and the lines that need to be replaced. That would be objective 3.2.3. And then also, of course, the water treatment plant, and possibly looking at the, I can't find it now. So I can't find my other one. Sorry, but those ones are up forefront in my mind. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And Councilor Lowe.
Yes, thank you. I might have been the only one that sort of misunderstood the assignment. So I'll just lead off with that. I do like what's in our packet, but so I would say that the housing is really important to me. I echo that, and I really think everything that's been described sounds good to me. I have one thing that isn't here, and I don't see this as a priority, and I want to be really clear about that. However, I would like to get on our radar for going forward. And this ties into inclusivity as well as a lot of other things for the city. But I'd like us to put down on our strategic plan to envision a city community center that's inclusive of social service agencies, such as existing PCS, but also a senior center, maybe childcare, possibly the Philomath Library. Since they need to expand, there could be some opportunities there. Certainly a much bigger community room, meeting room, and you can kind of take the list from there. So I have actually chatted with city manager on occasion about this. And maybe some other interests from other counselors. I see this as being a longer term goal, 5, 7 more years out. I don't see any significant action or anything for this year. I think we've got a lot on our plate that takes priority. But I guess I'm just thinking that maybe some small steps could be taken. I do see in the packet, we talked about a community survey. Something like this might be appropriate in there. So that's what I'm offering.
And I'll just mention that I have heard the idea independently from 5 different people about having a senior center and a community center over the years. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Lehman or Bisco? Lehman?
Sure, I'll go. I think that having a community visioning project would be outstanding. I think that we need to determine as a community if we want to let the people from Portland decide how we run our city and develop our city moving forward, which is 100% the case what's happening now. And I also think that we get a lot of, I don't want to say third hand, but that's basically what it is, third hand input on community visioning. And it would be nice to just have a community forum where everyone can be included. Now that some of our restrictions are easing, it would be easier to do that. And I think that the city council should sponsor some kind of a visioning activity. The housing thing is a significant priority to me as well, but it relates to the first point I raised, how we want to go about doing that. And I think having a community vision will help dictate how we move forward with future development.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Bisco?
Thank you, Mayor. I support many of these. I have sub points for some of them that were on just my list, so they weren't carrying the weight on their own, but they would fall under some of like Councilor Causey's disaster preparedness. Certainly that was one of the campaign topics that were out there, but having fire resiliency and redundancy accomplished there, and that's a water system master plan and investment conversation, but also planning regionally and both internally focused and externally focused. So when we look at our emergency and first responders, but also helping our community understand what they will likely experience in the event of an emergency and how to prepare for being kind of on their own unless they're actually in a life-threatening situation. So it may just be a matter of lack of resources, water, electricity, and such. So it's kind of a sub point to that disaster preparedness. There were a couple comments about environmental preservation of wildlands. I will come back to a motion that was made earlier to have a conversation with the council about how do we stand up a committee on environmental resource protection, sustainability, solar, green energy. It's kind of all encompassing, and it doesn't really matter what we brand it as long as we include all the right contents. How do we look forward for our community? Talk about conservation of water and landscape planting and things of that nature. So there's a lot of topics in that space, but I think it's appropriate also to look at the fact that climate change is having effects. And as a community, we can lead that conversation or we can play catch up. And it would be nice if the council could take a lead on that. I would like to encourage some sort of small business focused support. And that too layers into several of these. So whether it's the economic development piece, some of the conversations about community visioning, our small business community. We do have the Chamber of Commerce, but the Chamber of Commerce fills a specific need. Our agreement with RAIN also fills specific needs, but they also aren't quite the same thing as like a downtown business association. And again, it doesn't matter the title we give as much as the small business support that we give and how we tie that back to tourism, revitalizing our Main Street. Excuse me. So some sort of small business support that goes a little bit deeper than just we want to talk about tourism, but let's actually make that a partnership with our small business community. I would like to prioritize downtown revitalization, and that would include, probably actually bounces into Councilor Lehman's conversation about a community visioning project. If I'm assuming all of you know, but the audience might not, that both Benton County and the city of Corvallis went through a pretty extensive process. So many, many months, if not ongoing into years, where they did a 2040 Thrive and a 2040 Imagine Corvallis project. And that was very community intensive. And it was all topics. So it was everything that impacts your community, whether it's transportation and what we'd like to see the future transportation look like, the diversity of housing that will serve not only affordable housing, but townhomes, folks that aren't looking for single family home necessarily, multiplexes of housing. It includes what would we like our town square to look like? How do we like our parks and trail system to look like? So it's a little bit deeper dive, but it's really a community engaged, heavy community engagement project. And I'd like it to see it accordingly so that 40 years down the road, we have the Philomath that Philomath actually wants and not one that we accidentally fall into. With the stepping back from that community vision project is that space of the downtown revitalization. So the town square area, making a plaza that's usable for food carts, vendor spaces or maker spaces. There's a lot of that going on across the state, and there's a lot of organizations and nonprofits supporting that. So in that case, it's often just plugging into resources that already exist rather than recreating them from scratch. Also, there was talk about a dog park, and certainly the skate park could be part of that conversation as well. So what does it look like? Why do Falmouth want to stop here and visit, spend money? And again, ties back to tourism, ties back to our area-wide plan. I know that, but we can draw out some strategic planning bullet points. I would also like to prioritize, and I'll combine these two. So our land use planning application process is not as deep or as wide as it could be in order to prevent surprise land use applications or back us into a corner where we are responding reactively to a land use application that might not be best for Philomath, rather than being very proactive on the front end. And that's a very layered project. I know 20 years ago, there was conversation about including water criteria in that land use process. So I would like to have us look at our land use codes, firm those up a little bit to maintain as much home rule as we can. And definitely support many of the other topics that were here on the agenda or discussed this evening.
Great, thank you. And Councilor Andrade, you asked us to come back to you on that, so I'm sure you're ready now.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, when I talked about the listservs, I meant specifically for those kinds of projects in particular. I know that there were plenty of strategic or streetscapes meetings and documents that I sometimes missed, and I wanted to, at least watch, if not attend and participate in the meetings. Same for later on, I was a lot involved with the Main Street Plan and the others. But anyway, I think it would be really important to have that sent out regularly to people. I agree wholeheartedly with the visioning, super important. And I think we should get an intern. It would help. And like a youth intern would be cool to, help get youths involved in city government. But we can also tap into our colleges and universities nearby. Or we could identify at least one project, apply for funding, and for a rare AmeriCorps member, resource assistance for rural environments. And I know we just got an email from them today, and I had listened to a webinar from them last year, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I think it's something that we should really consider with some of these projects. And yeah, I'll say that's pretty, and then improving accessibility. to things in information and meetings at City Hall. I think it would be awesome if the city teamed up with the library to come up with some sort of loan program, Chromebook or something like that, and portable Wi-Fi for those who have unreliable internet. And there's a lot of different things I can think of.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Lowe.
Just to respond to Councilor Andrade, I think that's a great idea. Actually, the library does now offer that. There are hotspots that you can check out from the library. I don't know just how many are available, but it is an option. So it's a good thing. Thanks for bringing that up.
Excellent. I think that this is a really fruitful and helpful conversation. They say that if you have a long list of priorities, then you really don't have any priorities at all. And so just identifying what these tops of priorities are for us is as individuals is really helpful. And I think it can help us as we start to think about, I know we can get lost in the details of our strategic plan. It takes us a long time to go through, and there's just so many things, but having these things listed out by each of us, I just think helps offer clarity to staff and to ourselves. So we get a better sense for what each person is actually thinking and prioritizing. Chris, what would be helpful for you now that we have those at least stated? Should we offer a little bit of time? Should we just take a little bit of a break and kind of consolidate those and then just talk about that?
Yeah, I've kind of been doing that as everybody was talking and taking notes, so it's helpful to get these. Yeah, I mean, maybe just a couple minutes would be helpful. Maybe for that, let me jot down kind of what I saw as top priorities for at least where I was coming from and looking through the strategic plan. So maybe I'll share those real quick, and then we can take a quick break and kind of pull in and see if we can kind of settle. Again, we're not looking to necessarily go through the entire strategic plan tonight. What we're really focused in on is making sure the council as a body is kind of headed in the same direction, as the mayor well said. I mean, if everything's a priority, you really don't have them. And again, I appreciate the list, but if this was the list of the goals for the city for this year, there's very little that we get accomplished, right? So we do need to have a little bit finer point on the pen. But all that said, I'll just share briefly the things that jump out at me for this year that are going to be priorities from a staff standpoint on what we feel like needs to get done. The water treatment plant on the reservoir are high priority. Those are going to take considerable amount of time and oversight during construction. Getting that up and going and running properly will be a high priority for the city this year. The streetscape project as well is going to take a lot of oversight, a lot of work. That's a $16 million project. It's going to address a lot of things that individual council members touched on. So I appreciate that when we talk about economic development and businesses and the downtown visioning. We're going to be having those conversations as we continue not only construct but plan for what the future of Philomath downtown is going to look like. But the streetscape project in and of itself is just going to take a considerable amount of oversight and staff time, not only at the administrative level, but public works, going out, looking at things, identifying existing infrastructures of ground with the utility locates. There's just going to be a lot to that project. So I don't want to shortchange the amount of time that's going to be for the next 2 years going forward. The economic development piece, I heard several council members touch on that. I've got that on my list as well. Continued partnerships with Oregon Rain, continued efforts with REAL. REAL is the new acronym for the 8 cities or the Mid-Valley Partners, as they were going by for a while, but this is the rural cities in Lynn and Benton County. Now it's rural economic development initiative. So there's continued efforts with that group to do more than just apply for grants and pass them through the Oregon Rain, which deals primarily on building a entrepreneur ecosystem and really looks at all the different aspects of a vibrant economy within our rural cities. And so we're looking at some additional ways that we can do that. And again, I've got some more details we can share there, but just generally the economic development piece, I think there's portions that we need to address this year. On the planning side, I heard a lot of, again, on the planning and visioning. The comprehensive plan update is slated for this year. So tonight at the regular meeting, we'll be looking at chapter 1 and having that ordinance considered. The planning commission is actively working on the housing policies. Those will come to the city council, as well as to some public outreach events as that housing policy is being developed. On the heels of housing development, we'll be looking at the economic development policies, again, additional public outreach, and work with the planning commission on getting those housing development, economic development policies in place to update the comp plan. So those are huge. And then I've got on mine as well, a lot of interest in emergency preparedness. So what that looks like, we've talked about holding some town halls, having some training sessions, getting information out to people, doing some coordinated efforts with the county. I think that's really important work that needs to be done as well. So those kind of round up my, top 5.5, top 6. And again, I think there's bits and pieces, and Councilor Andrade kind of said, or maybe it's Councilor Bisco, there's kind of these subcategories for each of these kind of larger items, but just kind of focuses in where that's what I'm looking at as kind of high priorities for the city this year. Any comments on those real quick? And then again, maybe we take a break and I can kind of pull some more of this in together and come back with a little bit more concrete, maybe recommendations to move forward with.
Yeah, and I did talk with Chief Miller, Fire Chief Miller, about a month and a half ago about having a town hall on emergency preparedness, and asked him about what the appropriate timing would be for that for their schedules. And he suggested that May would be a good time for that conversation. And that we just need someone from the city leadership or staff needs to reach out to him and see if Rich can just get something onto his calendar to do that. So he said that was a big priority for him as well. Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, I know like the water treatment plant and the streetscapes is going to be taking a lot of staff time. I'm wondering if you can give me some idea of what you expect those projects to take up as far as council time goes.
Well, so on the water treatment plant and the reservoir, there won't be a lot of council time involved in that. I think those decisions have been made. It'll really be staff from this point forward, just overseeing the bidding process, contract selection, staying on top of the contractors, change orders, that sort of bit. So from the council standpoint, it won't be a lot. On the streetscape project, I think there's a lot of sub points to that. I can see a downtown envisioning process tying into that. Again, we did some of that as we developed what the downtown was going to look like. But I think there's a little bit more work to be done there. The area-wide plan follow-up is scheduled for later this month. That'll be a time for the consultant to come back and talk through some of their recommendations. I think it would be good for the council to take some additional action on those recommendations. Again, maybe that's some additional public outreach, some more engagement on what it could look like based on the consultant's recommendations. We're looking at, this is work that got started a year ago. Pat Deppa, the planner, was working with the planning commission on a downtown design manual that would help clarify and specify what the downtown could look like as far as building height, building setbacks, where the parking goes, those types of things. And so, how the downtown of the city is going to look and feel. I think there's still some policy and development right now at the planning commission level that again, at some point needs to have some public outreach and engagement and eventually come to the city council. So I see a lot of subplots under streetscape, and I think we could fill quite a bit of time there that the city council could be pretty actively involved in.
Thanks.
And Councilor Lowe.
Yeah, so Mayor, I'll be happy to reach out to Chief Miller and set something up for me if that's what's desired by the council.
I think it'd be great to have someone move forward with that.
Okay, you want me to do that then?
Yeah, does council agree? Can we get a head nod if we think that Councilor Lowe should do that? Sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be great to, pencil out what that would be. And he said that Rich Salsa would be probably taking the lead on that effort. And so it'd be dependent upon his schedule. Thank you. And Councilor Causey?
Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge that at the close of our last work session, Councilor Andrade had noted that additional work needed to be done on the social media policy. So I would like to ask if that could be the finalization and implementation of that policy could be added to the strategic plan.
Yeah, we can get that added in there. And I assume that, Chris, you're going to take all the ideas that we have developed last time and they'll come back to us and we'll be able to say yay or nay to different things at some point here.
Yeah, I have notes from the first session that we went through last month. Again, that was kind of more of at a page by page rate. And so I have those notes and I think Mayor Jones, appreciate your guidance kind of going a little bit higher level to make sure we're hitting kind of top priorities here. But maybe when we don't necessarily need to take a break. I mean, if the council's not wanting something consolidated tonight, if you want to continue to go through, if there's other priorities that aren't listed, to get those out on the table, it might be helpful to get a thumbs up from at least 4 or 5 other council members that should be on there as a priority list. And again, we can bring this all back to you for kind of a final approval at a next meeting. But rather than taking the break, maybe that'd be helpful. It's just anything specific that hasn't already been discussed that we feel like needs to be added into the strategic plan. I'll just throw the same caution I did last year. We've got a lot in here already and not a lot of staff time to do it. So we are, even with the list that we've generated so far, I'm going to have to prioritize some things, and some things may not get done this year. They may be, that's a great idea for us to start tackling next year or the year after.
And I know during the last work session, we didn't actually, we just let each individual counselor, kind of stay with what they were interested in, but we didn't say yay or nay to each one. And I know the process, we need to have the entire council at least say yes or no to each of those things. So I don't know if tonight's the night to do that, since we still have a lot more of the strategic plan to go through. And my plan was not to take up 2 or 3 work sessions to try to do this. My idea was really to do this higher level assessment of what the council was interested in, that we could kind of see what objectives fall out from that conversation. But Councilor Lowe.
Yeah, so just a question, in the packet, we've got the lead page before the notes from last meeting, strategic plan priorities. What's the intent of that? I mean, it's a lot of what we discussed, but then a few other things. Just wanted to have a frame of reference for that.
Do you want to talk about the context that you pulled those out from?
Want me to talk about it?
Oh, Chris.
Oh, Chris, yeah, thank you, because I can't talk about it.
Well, and I'll confess, I have my version of the strategic plan from last time. I didn't have Ruth print me off a new one, so I'm not sure exactly what you got in your packet compared to what I have in front of me. So, you mentioned
what was pulled out was like a selection of the objectives, but it wasn't all of the objectives. There was like a subset, and I think it was the the objectives that were the biggest priority for the next year or two, if I remember correctly. Does that sound approximately what you had someone developed, Chris?
Give me 2 seconds. Let me pull it up here.
Actually, why don't we just take a 3 or 4 minute break and we can just come back to that. So why don't we just come back at 6:11 on my computer?
All right.
Thank
See
you.
back in a minute.
Okay, sorry, everyone, that took a little longer than expected, but we'll start recording in just 1 second. Excellent, welcome back. And we'll go ahead and get to Councilor Bisco and Lehman, but I also wanted to just frame this a little bit more. Now that we've each heard from all the other counselors, I think it would be worthwhile to, and we've heard from all the other counselors, but also from the city staff. And if there were, 3 things that you really thought were things that the city should prioritize in this next year, or that we could, or you think it's really important that we do, I think it's worth mentioning that as well. So, but Councilor Bisco, you had a comment or question?
I'd ask you to repeat what you just said because we were talking 5 topics and I heard you say 3 and I'm not sure I understood the ask.
Yeah, so the ask is that you've heard from, we have all heard from all the other counselors now. We've also heard from staff about what we're working on and kind of some of the limitations. And so I think it's worth, thinking about those top 3 things that we are each hearing that the city could be potentially prioritizing this year. And that if you think, I know that we all have our ideas of what city staff's capacity is, but what are those 3 things that we as a council really would like to see move forward? And it's really us, not as individuals, but as a council. And so that's what we would like to identify is not a big laundry list, but just those 3 things that we as a council would like to see the city staff move forward with, given the limitations and the opportunities that exist. Because we have a lot of great ideas here, but it's still way too much for us to actually accomplish, right? But they're great. And I'm really glad that we're able to have these conversations. Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, actually, could I ask my question that
Yeah.
okay, so I would like to recommend that if we're not willing to put these possible strategic plan topics into the strategic plan document, as we all know, there are items in there that we've not done things with for, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but they're at least in the plan. So it's a working document. It's not a commitment that we're going to do it this year. And it's not a statement of, wow, staff needs to prioritize this, but at least it's keeping it in front of the council and the public that these are in fact priorities. I would encourage that we add all of these to that, either as a supplementary document or embed them into the strategic plan, because everything I heard has merit and benefit to the city. I would also recommend that before you ask us to decide on the top 3 priorities that we should move forward, I'd like to see what those sub bullets look like. So we have higher level ideas. Certainly a community visioning project, for example, that's not comprehensive enough to prioritize over, say, emergency preparedness when we really don't have any context on how to prioritize that. And yet there are also smaller ones in here, like finishing up the social media policy, for example. I don't know that we need to make that a top 3 priority as far as a sizable project. So the strategic plan, as I understand, is kind of that longer range. I'd like to see us at least acknowledge these in some sort of summary before we make a decision moving forward. Beyond that, I don't know that it would be right for us to put off some of these conversations. So affordable housing and community planning and downtown revitalization and economic development, they're all important. It doesn't mean we should take them all on in one big basket, but at least starting the conversation is a good idea. I don't think we should say, well, we're going to do the water treatment plant so everything stops in Philomath, or we're going to do the downtown streetscape street project specifically, but everything else is going to stop because of staffing. So with respect to staffing, at least continuing to have this conversation on a community level. So maybe we can pull in some community resources also.
Great, yeah, thank you. And I anticipate that all these things are going to be reflected in the strategic plan, either now or in the future. There's more meat has to be added to some of those items, but absolutely, I think that all these are great ideas and that I anticipate seeing them in one way or another, especially these higher level things. But Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, just for a clarification, I thought the original context in which we were looking at these things in the strategic plan was because budget season was coming up. And we wanted to be able to inform the budget committee on what the priorities were for the city so that, and the staff in particular, so that they could establish some baseline budget that we can then start to review as a committee. And we seem maybe to have lost sight of that. And along similar lines to what you said about if you have 100 priorities and you don't have any, if you update your strategic plan every 6 months, is it still strategic? Or is it just a brainstorming session and spitballing? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. And that's a good point. So, and I could be wrong on this, but my thought was that, you know, we come to this with the idea of, well, what is possible this year, given the limitations that we have? I don't see us taking a lot of the things in here that relate to budget impacts in this next fiscal year. It seems that some of the things, if they're really a big priority, that they're probably already in the city budget at this point. I know that we often make small suggestions or things, and we did ask that last time about what projects did you have that would have budgetary implications. Today, I was really wanting to focus in on these bigger picture things that are just our big priorities that wouldn't necessarily have budget impact this year, but over the next 1 to 5 years. It was a conversation that we haven't had in this way before since I've been a counselor, and I just think it's a really important thing that I was wanting to have for a while. So, but Chris, do you have anything to add? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important to do all of the above, right? Which is kind of where we're at with our priority list too, is right. So yes, we need some feedback from the council for specific items that we need that are going to have a budgetary impact, so we can make sure that as Mike is building the budget, those things are captured. But we also, as the mayor said, I think it's good for the council to collectively have a focus on what are those top kind of 3 to 5 things that we're looking at going forward that are going to be the big and heavy lifts. A lot of these things are smaller, and they're things that, you know, can happen fairly quickly. They're kind of more action item level things. So I think any feedback at this point is helpful. I take the note on updated strategic plan. Initially, the concept was that the strategic plan would be updated on an annual basis, and then we would bring it back to the council on kind of a quarterly basis just for updates on, hey, here's the things we've got done in the last 3 months. We've kind of gotten into the habit of doing updates every time it kind of gets brought, rather than just start doing corrections or modifications to it each time. And again, I think that's just part of kind of filling our way through this. So the recommendation at this point, being the first of the year, would be to make sure the council is comfortable with what's in here. Staff's gone through and removed action items that have been completed, objectives that have been completed for the year. And so this is really just running through it with the council to make sure that everything is in here that you'd like. We've got a lot of new things that we're going to be adding in. But again, we've still got to have those prioritizations for this year, next year. And again, the conversation is helpful for me. So I do appreciate the council maybe just entertaining me a little bit with your thoughts on high level priorities, things that are important but can wait for a year or two, and then a recognition of things that we want to add on the list to eventually get to, but some recognition that we're not going to be able to get to it for maybe a couple of years out still. That's important information for me to have.
And I did get some clarification about what was provided to us in the packet, Councilor Lowe. And it sounded like these are actually the top. I was wrong previously. It sounded like these are actually the topics that were commented on in the last work session. And we didn't get through the entire strategic plan last time. And so there's things that were missing, and some things we jumped around at a little bit. So anyway, that's what this was provided. Did anyone else have any thoughts that you wanted to share on what you've heard this evening? Councilor Bisco. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Councilor Bisco, I'm going to let someone else go. Councilor Causey, just because we just need to make sure that everyone can be heard.
If I could, I'd like to offer up my top 3 priorities, which I think first is the water treatment plant and reservoir, which we're committed to. The streetscapes project we're pretty much committed to, and the third is emergency preparedness. I believe within the streetscapes project, as Mr. Workman indicated, that we can initiate the downtown visioning process as well.
That's really helpful. Yeah, and I'm just going to add to a couple of those items. For me, I really think that making small steps in looking at the housing needs analysis, it sounds like the planning commission is already doing that, so I'm really excited about that. But that was one thing I would add there. Councilor Nielsen, don't often hear from you.
I do. And I, as Ruth, thank you, Councilor Kasia, for your comments. I feel exactly the same way. I think focusing on water treatment plant, the reservoir, the streetscape, those are large projects that just cannot be set aside because we don't want to discuss them in the strategic plan or have them be a priority. They are a priority. So I definitely support those. And as well, I think we can have a subset or action plans within the streetscapes and emergency preparedness to allow us to incorporate some of our other thoughts on things we'd like to accomplish, like the visioning and the community, involvement and transparency, and all of those things can be, I think, incorporated into what those other priorities are, the emergency preparedness and the streetscapes. And I think we can have a real good impact in bringing our city together and having their voices heard, with just keeping that a very narrow focus on those few priorities.
Thank you. And Councilor Lehman, you have anything to add? Any thoughts? No. Councilor Andrade?
Maybe come back to me.
Councilor Lowe? Okay. And Councilor Bisco?
So I would like to prioritize the Equal Pay Act. We talked about that at a previous planning session, and my understanding is that was going to be done before we did the hiring, and we've now hired 2 staff members without having that pay equity evaluation done. It is required by Oregon state law, and it was put into law in 2017. My understanding is we have not done a complete pay equity analysis, and that's compensation and salary of the entire staff, and anything that we have done has been done in-house. So I would recommend that we step into that space of compliance and do that evaluation. There is a budget impact to that. That's something that's been talked about or mentioned for 4 years now, coming into this budget committee process. And then I think that the whole point of this list that we have is really broad. I would hesitate to say that the council should make decisions for the community, and perhaps all of these topics are a reflection of the fact that there's a lot of interest for what Philomath should be looking at. Perhaps we should be prioritizing a community vision, ad hoc committee, planning process, consultant, bringing them on board and actually really standing up. So that would cover all topics. That would cover housing and transportation. It covers it all. I don't need to go down the list, including the tourism and the downtown town square plaza areas as well. So I'm going to recommend that as a priority, that we actually engage with the community and get their feedback rather than try and guess what we think the community would like to see and then put it in some strategic plan where we're not getting that full feedback from the community.
Thank you. And a couple of different things there. I think it's a great idea to get more community feedback. I also recognize that we're elected by the voters and that they elected us for a particular reason, and that there's certain things that we can do and we can make decisions because we do represent the community, or at least we try to. And so I think that's important just to keep in mind. But no, I think that getting more continuing the public engagement process is always important. So And then also, Chris, maybe you can remind me, and I think the Finance and Admin Committee had talked about this, maybe the whole council, but didn't we put in the strategic plan that we were going to do our salary analysis when we were getting ready to negotiate with the unions in preparation for that, maybe a year in advance or something?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And you had your hand up?
Yeah, I don't want to shift gears if we don't need to shift gears, but my question was going to be, maybe if the council could vet out the emergency preparedness idea a little bit more. We've heard that a few times tonight. We've heard recommendation to have Rich Salsa from Philomath Fire District talk to the community or the city specifically. Maybe the council could maybe help flesh out a few more objectives for that topic. That would be helpful.
Yeah, and I should also just mention that when I did sit down, I talked to Chief about that probably for 45 minutes to an hour, but he did, it wasn't that just Richard was going to take the lead on that, but that he'd take the lead from the fire department side, but the chief talked about bringing in outside partners from Benton County, I think from the state as well. He had a list of folks that he thought would be good to include in some sort of a panel discussion. And so I think it'd be good to have Councilor Lowe reach out and maybe move forward with some of the ideas that the chief and I had discussed. But yeah, I just don't have the capacity to do that. So I really appreciate someone else taking the lead on that. So I appreciate that.
I mean,
But-
right now we've got it as an objective under safe neighborhoods or safe community. It's objective 5.1.5, and it just reads educate public on emergency management and emergency preparedness. And there's 2 action items: provide educational opportunities to the community on how to best prepare for and react to fires, earthquakes, floods, and other disasters. And the second action item is support and encourage CERT training. So are there other specific objectives or action items that the council has in mind when you're thinking about emergency preparedness?
The town hall is the one thing I think would be great to have. Does anyone else have things that are missing? Again, that was under objective 5.1.5 in the strategic plan on page 21. Councilor Kazi?
Yes, I think I had mentioned in my email that I would like to see neighborhood by neighborhood evacuation preparedness drills. And I also think that we need to step back and look at the weaknesses in our infrastructure that make us more vulnerable to, particularly to fire. For example, I know that on Nebeck Hill and in the Starlight development, there is no generator backup for the water. So if the power goes out, we have no water. Nebeck Hill has no water. So I think that's an immediate issue to address. But issues like that where the community is actually vulnerable, I think need to be identified and prioritized for it to be addressed.
Yeah. And so that would be identified in either a vulnerability analysis or maybe a hazard mitigation plan as well. Either one of those
Correct.
things. The county would have one, but I haven't actually looked at it that closely. Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, I think in regard to the emergency preparedness too, I think it would behoove us to be prepared as we're going to be on the path of like tsunami evacuations and things like that from the coast, as well as facing our own emergency situations. So being prepared as a community for, you know, what happens if there is a tsunami? What happens to Philomath? Because one day we'll wake up and there'll be a bunch of people from Lincoln County here.
Right, thank you. And Councilor Bisco?
So I just wanted to comment on Councillor Kazi's point about the water, the backup generators up on Nebeck Hill and in Starlight Village. So the risk also is that when you lose water pressure, it's not just the water to that particular location in Philomath, it's that you lose the PSIs that are needed to maintain fire flows at all levels and points within the city. So it is an urgent priority. I think it's priority 2 in the water system master plan, but just making sure that it's not just about water, it's actually about water for the whole system. And it's about being able to put out fires by having the appropriate PSI at those hydrants.
Thank you. And Councillor Andrade.
I agree with Councillor Causey and Councillor Bisco about the emergency preparedness, focusing on that spot. And I also support Councillor Bisco's, she laid importance on vision, because even though even though we've been elected and we can make choices for the community, like there are plenty of topics that we don't know how they feel about. Like if we were to have this, we could find out if people actually wanted to have cannabis dispensaries here, and then we can go ahead and change them. Now we have to like actually schedule a town hall if we wanted to find that out, or go door to door, or make a survey or something. I think there are plenty of things that the council can come up with to, or that the council could ask community members best in that kind of a project.
Thank you. So Chris, I think that we've talked about the emergency management. Is there anything that we're missing, or folks? Yeah, I think that having the town hall and hearing from the people who work in this every day would be very helpful in helping us frame our interests and where we'd like to go with it after that conversation happens.
Yeah, I mean, just on the cuff on emergency management and emergency preparedness, I think a key partner that we need to make sure that we're reaching out to is Benton County Emergency Management. There's a lot of really sharp people there. There's some really good plans that have been in place that have been put in place by professionals with input from regional partners. A lot of collaborative efforts there to develop these plans. I think the failure, at least what I'm hearing tonight, is on pushing that information out and getting the awareness out there on what those plans are and what they entail. So I definitely think some educational opportunities with the community on what those plans are, what they look like, would be helpful.
Certainly, thank you. Councillor Lowe?
So if we're moving down that path, what's the time frame? When would you like to have the town hall?
The
on
chief
this?
just said May would be a good time for them because it's before fire season preparations need to occur. And he said that historically that would be a good time.
Okay. And does that work with the city staff and everybody else? One councillor.
There's certain times in May that won't work for me. I'll be I'll be in Alaska for parts of May, but
Okay. Well, you need to be there.
it's also budget season. So what is that? What are the implications of budget season on that opportunity?
Yeah, so there'll be some extra meetings on Wednesday nights, so we might avoid the Wednesdays and council Mondays. And
It doesn't have to be city sponsored. It could be just sponsored by the community more generally. It could be held on a weekend too. Doesn't have to be live streamed. But I don't know. I think it's worth having a conversation with them and seeing what we can do.
Okay. Yeah. If it's okay, I'll do some reconnoitering and then rally back to the group here.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And Councillor Causey?
Yeah, I just wanted, maybe this is implicit in what David was saying, but I just wanted to suggest that in addition to Rich Salta, that we include the Benton County Emergency Preparedness in the town hall. Is that what you're thinking? And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if, I don't know that Counselor Lowe needs to take that on. Is that something that the staff can coordinate for us?
I'm hoping that it sounded like it just was on us to kind of identify a date and time, and that the chief can help and Rich can help bring that all together and make that happen. But if staff needs to help them, we can ask later. But I think that David's could help us figure out what needs to happen before now and then.
And I have contacts at Benton County too, so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think with that, why don't we just go ahead and take a break until 7, and we can come back and get started on council business at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the work session. Thanks everyone for being here and participating. Talk to you all soon.